Before I sing, I'm just going to do just a very brief, kind of a short story that leads into the song, because the song I'm about to sing is about the Apostle Peter. Now, if you know anything about the Apostle Peter, he was a fisherman by trade, and he would have been kind of a rough character kind of guy. Probably, before he came to Christ, he probably tossed back a few brewskis in his time and, the whole 9 yards. But when he came to Christ, he was one of the first disciples. And he was led to Christ by his brother Andrew. And there's not much mention of Andrew. And apparently Andrew didn't lead a whole lot of people to Christ. But if you're going to lead one person to Christ, don't think bad of yourself if that's all you end up leading, because Andrew led Peter, and we all know the story from there. But Peter was kind of a brash kind of character. But when he came to Christ, he gave it all up. He walked away from his fishing, and for 3 years, he followed the Lord. For 3 years. He was the Lord's right-hand man, you might as well say. And in his boisterous character, Jesus was trying to tell them one night about things that were going to happen. And in his boisterous character, Peter stood up and he says, "Lord, if necessary, I'll die for you. I will die for you." So great was his love for God. But the Lord turned around and said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me thrice." And Peter was probably kind of, I won't do that. That'll never happen to me. I won't do it. I love you so much. I won't do that. But when Peter and Jesus were before the Sanhedrin, when Jesus was at his trial, Peter had gone to the fire to warm up, and he'd already denied him. But he goes to the fire and he warms up. And if you know the layout of the area to where they were, Jesus could see Peter and Peter could see Jesus. And he denies him again. And right away he is reminded of what Jesus had told him. And right at that moment, you can't say this is by chance, because right at that moment, Peter and Jesus locked eyes. And Peter knew exactly what he had done. Now put yourself in his shoes. He'd followed him for 3 years, loved him deeply, considered him as his Lord and Savior. Jesus was his all and all, and here he is in a moment of fear, because the reality was if you acknowledged Christ at that time, if you said you were a follower, you could have been hung right beside him. You could have been hung. And in fear, he said, "No, I don't know the man." But when he locks eyes with Jesus, he knows exactly what's happened, and it hurt him so much that he wept, and he went away. And this song picks up where that leaves off. Gates and doors were barred, and all the windows fastened down. I spent the night in sleeplessness. I rose at every sound, half in hopeless sorrow and half in fear the day would find the soldiers breaking through to drag us all away. And just before the sunrise, I heard something at the wall. The gates began to rattle, and a voice began to call. I hurried to the window. I looked down into the streets, expecting swords and torches and the sound of soldiers' feet. There was no one there but Mary, so I went down to let her in. And John stood there beside me as she told me where she'd been. She said they moved him in the night and none of us knows where. The stone's been rolled away, and his body isn't there. We both ran toward the garden, then John ran on ahead. We found the stone and the empty tomb just the way that Mary said. But the winding sheet they wrapped him in was just an empty shell. The power where they'd taken him was more than I could tell. Well, something strange had happened there, just what I did not know. John believed a miracle, but I just turned to go. Circumstance and speculations, they couldn't lift me very high, because I'd seen them crucify him, and then I saw him die. And back inside the house again, all the guilt and anguish came. Everything I promised him just added to my shame. And when at last it came to choices, I denied I knew his name. You know, even if he was alive, it couldn't be the same. And suddenly the air was filled with a strange and sweet perfume. Lightning came from everywhere. It drove shadows from the room. Jesus stood before me with his arms held open wide. And I fell down on my knees and clung to him and cried. He raised me to my feet as I looked into his eyes. Love was shining out from him like sunlight from the skies. Guilt and my confusion disappeared in sweet release, and every fear I'd ever had just melted into peace. He's alive, he's alive, he's alive, and I am forgiven. Heaven's gates, they're open wide. He's alive, he's alive, he's alive, and I am forgiven. Heaven's gates, they're open wide. He's alive, he's alive, he's alive, and I am forgiven. Heaven's gates, they're open wide. He's alive, he's alive, he's alive, he's alive, he's alive, he's alive, he's alive.